Hello everyone, welcome back to Newsroom. I'm Chella Smith. This is your Middle East to U.S. entertainment news here on YouTube. I air on Fridays. I bring you the latest on reforms and economics Iraq based on reports put out by the Middle East news media outlets. I do this weekly review and it's based off my interest. Thank you everyone for joining me. Last week we spoke about the rise in the dollar, oil and gas laws, and the budget delays. So let's take a look at this week's headlines. Twilight News reports Iraq's political analyst based in Washington, Nizar Haider, spoke on Thursday about the importance of Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's visit to France during the current stages. Haider told Shafaq News Agency, Iraq is looking for who will invest in it. It needs $233 billion to start real sustainable development, according to the latest report issued by the World Bank in this regard. And for the part, France is fully ready to share Iraq's ambition. He also added that Paris and Baghdad have special relations at various levels since the 70s until now, despite the circumstances that went through Iraq and the region caused by Saddam Hussein's policy, which stopped the French presence in Iraq for a period of time to return the presence significantly, especially during the war on terrorism. Haider also pointed out that Thursday, as the Sudanese government expressed its readiness to help Europe overcome the energy and gas crisis in particular because of the war in Ukraine, it is very natural that Paris is aware of the readiness to be one of those who benefit from the Iraqi gas, especially since the French giant Total is the first in the world in revenues in the year 2022, is one of the largest international companies specialized in the field of gas in particular and oil in general. She is also the supervisor of the gas pipeline project passing from Kurdistan region to Europe through the Turkish territory. He also added that Sudani seeks during his current visit to complete the deal Total, which is estimated at a $27 billion, which has remained stalled for several reasons over the recent years. It can be said that the large and wide exchange of benefits and interest between Baghdad and Paris is underway to be completed if Baghdad seizes the important opportunity to achieve sustainability. The Iraqi political analyst based in Washington stressed that capturing the opportunity requires stable political and security environment as well as legislation and law that facilitates the process of building economics, financial, and energy partnerships between Iraq and other countries, including perhaps France. On Thursday, the Iraqi Prime Minister flew to French capital Paris at the official invitation of the French President Emmanuel Macron. Al-Sudani has said in a written response to question the AFP that Iraqi's government will seek to activate the agreement concluded between the two countries, especially in transport, energy, and investment sector. In 2021, the French company the Total Energy signed a contract with Iraq worth $10 billion, but difficulties hindering its implementation despite Baghdad's effort to renew its electrical networks. The agreement with the French giant includes the construction of gas collection and processing units extract from crude oil used from the power generating and planning to build a 1 gigawatt photovoltaic power plant in southern Iraq. Al-Sudani expressed his hope for security, saying, "We hope that there will be security cooperation between the two countries, especially in the field of training and development of Iraq's security capabilities, as well in the field of weapon procurement." Macron has visited Iraq twice since the beginning of the first term in 2017, and in December 2022, Macron, during a regional conference in support of Iraq, called on Baghdad to take path other than the exterior suppleted model. Iraqi Business News reports a meeting on Wednesday attended by the Minister of Transport, the Prime Minister, and a number of general managers, and the details regarding the Iraqi Dry Canal project was reviewed. The project was linked to Iraq's Grand Fall port, which is still under construction, by rail to the Mediterranean, which the intentions of providing a cost-effective alternative to the Suez Canal. The meeting was attended by the Italian counseling company in charge of comparing the project designs, which Iraq Business News understands to be the Pergetti Europopia and Global SPA PEG, and by the Director General of Ports of Iraq, the General Manager of Iraqi Airways, and the General Manager of Iraqi's Railways. Prime Minister al-Sudani stressed the strategic importance of the project, emphasizing the need to expedite its implementation. He says it will provide an economic renaissance in the new Iraq. Economics Alfred News reports an informed source reveals significant changes that will affect the Department of Government Banks. The source told Euphrates News that the significant changes will affect the management of government banks soon in light of the government's 3-month period given to them to evaluate the performances and tasks of the department and achievements that has been implemented within the framework of the government programs, which represent the future vision of the government. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani on Monday exempted the governor of the Central Bank of Iraq, Mustafa Ghalib Zad, from his post against the backdrop of the continued rise in the exchange rate of the dollar and the bank's inability to rein in on it. Al-Sudani assigned the former governor of the bank, Ali Mohsen al-Alik, to manage the bank by proxy. The Prime Minister also retired the director of the Trade Bank of Iraq and assigned Ribler al-Hamdani to manage the Trade Bank of Iraq in addition to his duties. The Secretary of State and the U.S. Ambassador to Iraq discussed the upcoming visit to Washington, the program of work and meetings to discuss political and economic issues and aspects related to the Iraqi and American currency. Twilight News reports a report by the U.S. magazine revealing on Wednesday a sudden but steady move by Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani towards Washington by stressing the retention of U.S. forces. And while it indicated that the position reflects the position of Iraqi officials, including former Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi, he stressed the Washington possibility of Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani adjusting the balance towards the relationship with the United States after his statement about the continued need for presence of foreign forces in the country. The American magazine Foreman of Foreign Policy says in a report translated by Twilight News, adding that Iraq's leaders have always affirmed behind closed doors their adherence. Referring to the vote in Iraqi parliament in 2020, the report quoted former U.S. officials as saying that the scene in Baghdad was the state of clowning and meadow, where members of the Iranian-backed Kataib Hezbollah pushed for the votes to collect just as U.S. lawmakers do on Capitol Hill. But in Baghdad, the situation indicated that there were a lot of, the report quoted former U.S. Department of Defense official Jonathan Lord, an assistant in Congress and served as the director of the Middle East Security Program at the New American Security Institute, as saying that the Hezbollah operates where making phone calls and sending messages to the number of members of the House of Representatives, threatening them and or offering bribes in order to vote in favor of. There was tremendous amounts of coherence to move the votes in order to bring this decision to an end. Lord added, but the report noted that the U.S. presence, which had become attached to thin thread in Iraq through the fragile call of Baghdad governments, now seemed to remain indefinite. This conclusion emerges after al-Sudani, in the first interview with the U.S. media outlet last week, told Wall Street Journal that he wanted to keep 2,000 American soldiers who are on the task of training Iraqi forces to fight ISIS, saying, "We believe we need foreign forces. The elimination of ISIS needs more time," but the report considered that despite the position of al-Sudani in open support of the U.S. mission in Iraq, something has become increasingly limited since the announcement of the defeat of ISIS in 2017, and that the position of al-Sudani seems like a sudden shift, but it reflects a steady movement towards Washington in the recent years, an implicit reference to the position of Iraqi. In the contents, the report quoted U.S. officials as saying that the heads of Iraqi government were behind closed doors, expressing their strong support for the military's mission, including Adel Abdul Mahdi, who was empowered during mutual confrontations between U.S. forces and Iranian-backed forces, which culminated in a U.S. airstrike with a drone that killed the commander of the Iranian Quds Forces, Qasem. The report quoted a former senior Donald Trump's administration official who asked not to be named as saying, "Every time the door was closed, the issue was as if they were saying, we support you 100% and we want American troops here in order to assure a continued defeat of ISIS and also to counter Iranian influence." The former U.S. official added that when the doors open, their issues are adjusted because they have to deal with their own history. The report pointed out that the United States was increasingly concerned about the extremism that was leaking from war-torn countries to other vulnerable countries as ISIS spread from Syria to Iraq in 2014. The report pointed out that Sudani expressed in particular his concern about the possibility of a terrorist act carried out through the infiltration of a group returning to Iraq from inside Syria, as the organization still has hideouts in Abdur Providence and shown indications that express its strength in the north, and also claimed a responsibility for the recent bombings near Baghdad. The report pointed out that Sudani began using counterterrorism forces to suppress the dollar smuggling operations into Iran, another step likely to arouse satisfaction from policymakers in Washington, in addition to the Sudanese invitation to U.S. President Joe Biden to visit Baghdad. They have to strike a balance, but they also need the continued support of the United States. The former senior Trump administration official told Iraqi officials, adding that the United States is an auxiliary element in Iraq and it is not trying to manipulate their political system, or we have a different loyalty in their militia and army. We are only there to make them more capable so that the common enemy, the main motivation for changing the relationship was the possibility of more U.S. aid and dollars entering through trade relations to become more similar relations with Washington relations with the Gulf countries, the reporter said. He added that even as al-Sudani's statement maintains the U.S. military's mission, which the report pointed out that undermines by the fragile policy that worsens by the assassination of General Soleimani, he added that the experts are concerned about the lack of interest in the relations between the United States and Iraq from within the Biden's administration, but the report noted that the situation may change, explaining that Sudani intends to send a delegation to Washington in February in an attempt to pave the way for a meeting with Biden later this year. Sudani's statement was controversial. The report quoted by the Lord of the New American Security Institute as saying, "I think the big problem for CENTCOM is that there seems to be no planning or vision about what the future of U.S.-Iraq relationship looks like or what it should look like." That was all very interesting. Then Earth News reports the National Awareness Movement confirms its support for the central protest against the high price of the dollar, while organizations and formations call for the dissent that took place Wednesday at 12 o'clock in the afternoon in front of the headquarters of the central bank in the capital, Baghdad. And you've been watching Newsroom Weekly Review. I'm Chella Smith, your Middle East to U.S. entertainment news on reforms and economics Iraq. Iraq. I bring you the latest Dinar news without having to keep up with all the different outlets. I'm here on YouTube every Friday, so don't forget to subscribe and turn those notification bells on. If you like my content, you can give me a thumbs up. If you really like my content, you can always leave a super chat or a super thanks. Again, thank you for being a subscriber, and thank you for visiting Rooms Chella Smiths, your trusted Dinar news. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.